Can you walk us through your journey? When did you first realize you wanted to coach rather than keep competing as a player?
So I actually wasn't even going into college coaching when I graduated from college. So I went to St. Lawrence and competed at a really high level there. My team was fifth in the country at our highest point. I always tell people I was not the best player. I was on a team with a lot of really, really good players, and I think that we just figured out a way to win. I've been playing since I was 5, so my whole life. And then I graduated and I moved to Boston, and I had a degree in psychology and education, and I got a great entry-level job at a psych institute in Boston. I thought, hey, this is like what I'm going to go do, and I'm going to walk away from sports and, kind of hang it up after, so long. You guys play sports your whole life, and then, all of a sudden the end comes and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do now? So I moved to Boston. I got this great, kind of a job. I was going to go back and get my master's, and there was this like small part-time coaching job that was open at a small all-women's college, and the team wasn't very good at the time. And I thought, hey, I'm still connected to the sport. This is something that maybe, I'll do on the side. So I got the job, and I was running from work from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock to practice from 5 to 8, and I was getting home at like 10 o'clock every night. And you're 23 years old, and this is kind of like, you're living in this world where you're just kind of out there doing what you think you should be doing. So my season ended, and I called my dad, and I said, I think I'm going to try to be a head college basketball coach. And there was like just crickets at the end of the line, like no response. And he was like, okay. He's like, well, I think you can do it. I think you can do anything, but that's going to be pretty hard. I said, yeah. He's like, it's going to be like cutting down an oak tree with a butter knife. And I said, yeah, okay, but I'm going to do it. So I quit my job, quit my full-time job, worked in a school. I had a degree in psych, so I worked as a TA for the next 4 years so I could get to practice and recruit. And, that my job was a little bit different, but I knew it was going to be really tough, but I knew as soon as that first season ended, I loved the girls, and that was just like what I was here to do. I was here to coach. Like that was my calling. I think I disconnected the playing piece as I got going a little bit more. I think in the beginning it's really hard. I was a head coach here at 27, so I was really able to start disconnecting it then. But when you're a young assistant, you're still jumping into practice, and you still feel like you're part of something, and you're a competitor. So you have to find this line between like being able to kind of put that part of your career away and being able to be what your team actually needs you to be.
You talk to us a lot about how when you were a freshman, you were smaller, and how you had to build your trust up. So for the incoming freshmen, what do you think are some of the easiest ways that you can kind of build that trust into a coach and kind of show that they belong here?
I think the biggest thing, especially in my program, is just work hard. I think that, that's such a big word, and it can be broken down into so many different facets, but don't have a coach have to let a coach have to coach your effort. When I have to start coaching your effort, then we're in a completely different conversation. So I think when freshmen come in, first years come in, especially on my team, it's not easy to play for me. Like it's a hard, but I think, you've got to find your way to the weight room, and you've got to find some sort of accountability. None of y'all talk enough as freshmen in terms of communication on court, field, or ice. Like none of you do it. So it's like that's a different maturity level. So it's a demand. Like I demand it out of you in a way that like again it's part of the culture of our team. So for me, I always say like if you're missing shots, you're messing stuff up, you're making mistakes, you're gonna make mistakes. But if I'm coaching your effort, then we're gonna have a completely different conversation. I think that's a big disconnect from when you guys get out of high school, you get to college, that level of intensity just goes up so much no matter what you're playing, that you've got to find a way to the coach, like find a path to that person. So for me, I always say, like, if you're giving me everything and I hear you talking and you're messing up some stuff and you're missing a shot, I'm okay with that. I'm going to let those things kind of go, especially with first years because they're still trying to figure this out a little bit. But the effort piece for me is a really big thing, and the communication piece, like, just like kind of talking is not talking in our gym. So I think that's a culture shock too. But I think also like, just strength and size. Like you got to, learn your body. I was 5'4", very small going into college, and I didn't understand like what it was going to take at that level. And I think for you to have honest conversations with your players, you have to give them the chance to want to change. If you don't give them that chance, then you know what? They could stay the same way that they are. So you got to give them the information that they're going to need. But for me, my freshmen, it's not easy. They go through kind of a gauntlet with me. But I think they find the way to coach Kate, like work hard, play defense, talk. She's less about the basket. She's less about the flash. So give them something that's achievable.
Kind of building off of that, what are your non-negotiables in your program?
Number one is like respect. I think that's a non-negotiable for me, but I think in terms of just like practice can be separated from culture, but our practice is a non-negotiable is talking. Like you'll just be asked to leave. So I think the communication is really, really high. Just every play is an effort piece to me. So, I think those are non-negotiables, and you have to demand those out of your players. Like, it's not easy to have you can have non-negotiables and kids won't meet them. So it's like, what are you doing to actually get them to achieve a non-negotiable? Our practices, like, are they organized? Like, how you come in, how you warm up? Like, everything's kind of a non-negotiable. It's a program. There's a standard of the way that we live. But in terms of like the biggest issue that kids have is the way that I make you communicate with your teammates on court is just a lot for freshmen at times. Just in terms of like just who we are, like I want us to have a personality of like kind of toughness and gritty and, selflessness. And those are sort of things that go into the respect. I'd give up. We're not a high octane offense team. If you watch us play, like we're really good defensively, and it shows that that's like a selfless piece of us. So those are things that are just non-negotiables. If you're about what you're about, you're not going to last here. If you're just about how many buckets you can put in, it's not gonna work. So again, just kind of you gotta as a coach, you gotta pick your lane. So if you want to be a high octane guy or girl and go for offense and flash and all this and give up this, then that's what you're gonna do. But you gotta pick something that you're gonna care about within your program. And for us, it's defense. For us, it's communication, respect, being a good teammate. Like our bench culture is really important. If you're like moping on the bench, we'll pull you in, we'll highlight you on film. It's a whole thing. So again, just like the little things that go outside the program that necessarily everybody doesn't see.
So at the end of the day, when it's the end of the year and their seniors graduate, what's like the number one thing that you want them to remember? It doesn't have to be basketball. It can kind of be like how they change as a person. But what's that kind of goal you want them to have as a person after they graduate?
Growth. I think that they can look back and say this was not an easy 4 years, but I'm so glad it was worth it, and this was a great part of my life, but that they can say I grew as a woman. Wins, losses, championship games, that stuff is all fleeting to me, and everybody about me knows it. So if like you didn't grow as a woman and you didn't grow not just in basketball, but you didn't grow off court too, like I want them to be able to get into life and in that moment of hard be like, I can do this. And I think that there's a resiliency factor to like the way that I coach my players. Like you can see it in them. Like they have to be resilient to play for me. So for me, it's that growth and that resiliency. And they've learned just to be able to stand on their own 2 feet as women and really kind of like, I hate to just be badass. Because I want them to kind of emulate part of the way that I carry myself. And so if I have a little bit of, if I've had a part of that in their life, then this has been a win.